Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Back to Miami. What's up, everybody? My name is Alan Kett. Welcome to the Museum of Graffiti's Oral Histories podcast, presented by Modelo. Today's guest is none other than Fuzi, direct from Paris, France, or wherever you're from these days.
These days I'm more in California since now 9 years.
Okay.
9 years in California, near LA, but I'm French, obviously you can tell. And I can already tell that I apologize for my bad English, but since you don't speak French, I have to speak English, and we'll try to figure out a way to communicate.
We appreciate your English.
Thank you.
And your attempts.
Thank you.
I think you are a very good English speaker compared to my French.
You're really nice. You're really nice.
We're winning. So Fuzi, thanks for being here with us today and spending some time to talk to us about your story, your personal journey, and what you've encountered in your short life.
Yeah, that's true. Let's talk about
it. Let's talk about it. So, the things that, I'm curious about from the beginning are your illustrations. You are someone that I know for a very, unique tattoo style and style of illustrations. And you are now releasing a new book called Fuzie World, which is like a small brick. This is a lot of pages, a lot of illustrations. When did you start drawing?
So basically, this book is an attempt to show my world. So this is why it's Fuzie World, and try to organize my universe. So I'm working a lot. I'm doing a lot of stuff, and sometimes I think it's important to just look at what you accomplished, not to say, wow, I'm amazing, I did a lot of stuff, but just to understand where you're going, So for me, it was interesting to organize all my work into one little something, one object. So I took all my drawings, and not all my drawings. I did a selection of my drawings, and I put it together, and I organized it by themes, and I try to explain in this book with some text where it came from. And where it came from, because it was your question, what is this kind of illustration? It's really a mix of my beginning as a graffiti writer, painting on trains and trying to be different, and having a real passion and obsession for the really beginning of graffiti in New York, like the pioneers in New York, but not a way to say, okay, they are the first one, it's super interesting, but more about the fact that it was a certain way of purity, even if purity can be a terrible word, but something really naive, something really, pure, something like people trying to express themselves with maybe a kind of folk art way of doing it. And I was really interested into the fact that children, because they were really young guys, could express themselves this way. And more that the styles, the different styles or the colors or the stuff, of course I was interested into the what we commonly think is beautiful, like a Sin Walker or Lee Walker. For me, it's beautiful. Even Blade, it's beautiful. But I was liking like the guys were just writing a name, even if it was shaky or like it was what was attracting me, like something like art. It was art for me. It was something that since the beginning I was like, I can't do the same, because I've learned to do graffiti. I can't copy this thing, but I have to be close to the feeling of being a child trying to write his name on the train. So through my journey, I was trying to go closer and closer to this feeling of being a child and trying to express who I was with kind of straight from my heart, basically.
Sure, there's kind of an innocence
totally
in that style. of people, or like you're saying, children that draw with no fear of messing up.
Yeah.
Or it's okay however it comes out. A horse looks like a horse, a car looks like whatever the car looks like, and it's pretty free.
It's totally free. And you know, which is really interesting, and what I learned during these days painting subways and doing illegal graffiti, is that it's supposed to be freedom. You go outside, you have no rules, you're against everybody, you write your name, you're a rebel, it's so cool. But at the same time, you know it, like, for sure, it's full of rules. We are entering a new world, we're creating a new world. When I say we, it's like graffiti writers. But we are creating new rules that you can't you can't do something different, because if you do something different, you're an outsider, and people will just think you're a toy or you're something like that. But you know, now having this kind of conversation is like, I'm sure the young guys or what just think, but what is he talking about? You know, everybody can do whatever. But no, I'm talking about, like, in the 90s, for example, in France, when I was trying to do something different, which means like having, like, I don't know, like exactly what I was talking about, trying to be innocent, trying to be free, trying to not follow the rules, trying to not be like Bando, making a super... Bando was telling, the famous Bando in France, was telling, if you're real graffiti writers, you have to be technically perfect. You have to know to make perfect lines and stuff like that. It was his way of thinking, you know, which I respect, but I don't want that. It's terrible. For me, it's the worst feeling, having to be technically perfect. No, it's impossible. I want to be perfectly free doing that. So I lost what I wanted to say, but yeah, in the 90s, in Paris, it was not good to do what I did, you know, and I made a lot of enemies. A lot of people were telling that I was painting with my left hand, like I had no idea how to paint, but I was painting everywhere, with my crew everywhere, on every train. My line was covered with my name on my... So it was funny, 'cause in a certain way, it was like, okay, we hate this guy, we don't understand what he's doing, he's a toy or something, but in the same time, he's everywhere. So there is something weird, you know, but today, it's different. Everything open, all the style, you can do whatever you want, but it was not like that in the past. So when I started to try this new style, I was already not mastering, but I could do a perfect line, I could do something technique, but I was choosing to do something different. And the people basically perceive me as an ignorant. This is why I said, okay, you think I'm ignorant, I take it for me, and the style is the ignorant style.
Right.
So it was basically a slap in their face to say, you think I'm ignorant, you're the ignorant, you don't even understand that I'm trying something different. So that was a kind of a joke and being ironic with that.
Sure. And then so that in that ignorant style that you started to push out there, it was to express yourself in your own way, to break the rules and do something new, but I guess a little bit retro, like you're saying, maybe inspired by the old school, but in a very original and unique way, in your own way.
For me, since the beginning, it was, of course, inspired by that, but it was more like a tribute to these people who started that.
Yeah, because I see your style. It doesn't necessarily remind me of it, but I understand the connection. I understand, you know, the bold black, as an example, bold lines that you would see maybe from writers doing characters in 1973, Staff 161. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's maybe the closest that I see to this. Really early on, the guys that started to do the cartoons on the trains, Cliff 159, that were painting very fast, didn't really care, were kind of concerned with the message or the symbolism, not in perfection.
But the thing is, the name you just mentioned, they are, of course, big inspiration. But for me, I was now the drawings that you see in this book. It's like 30 years later. You know, when I started to have this kind of mindset, it was like the mid 90s. So I started to do something who was kind of really more wild than what is here. So here is really like yeah, it's 25, so it's 30 years. 30 years later, it becomes like that. But it was way more dirty, way more free, and most important, it was on trains.
Yes.
You know? And I think this is something extremely important to say. It was on trains. So on trains, when people buff your trains, you have also, it's terrible because you're making something, you're creating something, and at the same time, you know that maybe tomorrow it will not exist anymore. But it creates also a freedom to do whatever you want, because even if you mess up the thing, even you don't really care, you know, tomorrow it will be, nobody will see it, and it's just for you. So you have this moment, this pure moment of creativity, you don't give a shit, and sometimes it's just shitty, sometimes it was nothing, but sometimes there is a little something really cool, and when I look at this art that I was making, or whatever it's named, you can, sometimes there is a really cool something, you know. So, and something important, it was something that I was doing with other people. You know, we were a crew, we were like having fun and also being against the other crew. So it was really a competition. And this factor of competition was really important, at least for me. You know, I'm really competitive. I want to more than others. I want to be different than other people. And it was really part of the equation.
So let me ask you a question. During the 90s in Paris, when you were painting trains, was it a very active time in the train system? Was there a lot of riders, a lot of competition?
No. Basically, the beginning, the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, it was super active. It was like the people who created really the Parisian style with using the mops, with having a super crazy style, really, really nice style that nobody made better style, I think. And I was inspired by this generation. You know, you always think the previous generation is always the best one, you know? So I was like, they were my hero. But when I started in 89, sorry. I started in 89, but I was really a toy, you know? I was like living near a train yard, so I was just staying there, and I discovered graffiti through the train yard. So, but I was really a toy. I was like knowing nothing. And when I started really to paint a lot of trains, it was more like 94, 95. And this period, it was really dead in Paris. So with my friends, we tried to bring back this energy of the beginning of the 90s, this previous generation. And it was this kind of generation of guys, little bit tough. It was like it was not gangs, obviously. We are not in the US, we are in Paris, just kids writing their names. We are not gangs. But it was kind of thugs, let's say. And in the middle of the 90s, I think the vibe was more cool, kind of. And we tried to bring back this kind of energy, painting the trains, a lot of tags, painting the inside of the trains, which for me was extremely important. I spent a lot of time doing that, just with a mop, and writing my name everywhere, and controlling a line, which now when you think about that, it's like kind of totally, I don't know, I have seen it in subway art. I said, oh, they talk about controlling the line is super. I want to control my line, so I want a tag in every single car of my trains on my line. And I did that with several nicknames. And at some point, it was covered of black tags with black ink, all the inside of the train, and the outside too. So it was something, for me, super important, and it was all references from the past. So it was references from the Parisian previous generation and the pioneer of New York. But which is really interesting and funny when you think about graffiti. It's like so worldwide that everybody have his own interpretation, you know. Today you can see it everywhere on Instagram, but in the 90s you had like a couple of books, you know, or zines or stuff like that. So that was just, I think it let more room for interpretation and imagination.
It's interesting to me to hear you wanting to do the insides and bomb the insides, and then also mention the inspiration of the previous generation. Out of curiosity, what were some of the names from the previous generation that you remember that were around for those people that don't know?
The CMP, the 93 MC, even the AOC, it was less, the AOC, this kind of guys, this kind of crew that were really important.
And were they also doing insides and tagging?
It was like really a culture of doing the outside of the subway cars with mobs.
Oh, yes.
Mobs with like black ink, and it was covered of that. Even the inside cover of the only ink, black tags or blue tags with ink.
Yeah. I saw that recently in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it on a train, someone that had covered a whole car with...
It was covered like...
so many tags.
Yeah, it was like that. It was not really graffitis, like pieces. So the AOC started to make pieces, and they were in trouble because they were making pieces on the top of tags. And the guy said, no, you can't cover my tags. so they had beef because the guy started to make... And we are talking about the end of the 80s or beginning of the 90s. So that's kind of funny. So yeah, it was super important to tag, to write your name, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there is this release of aggression that's happening when you're bombing, you know, and even in the notion of kinging the lines, of taking over the lines.
Just the vocabulary is already aggressive, you know. It's already we're using all this vocabulary about bombing, about like taking over. All this vocabulary is really interesting, and I think it's about the competition, you know. And I also think, for me, competition can be healthy because you want to do better, you want to do more, and it's cool. It's cool. Competition is really good. Sometimes it becomes a little bit violent, but in the same time, it's a world, at least at this period, it was a world of young men going out to write their name. At some point, it's just normal that you have some friction, you have some guys fighting because you have all this energy. It's not that bad. And I think it's something that people lost, at least I talk about France. They lost it a little bit, this kind of, roughness. I think it was an important part of why I was liking it at this period.
I mean, I think also from the time in the hip-hop movement in the 90s, there was aggression,
Yeah,
right? There was, the music was bold. I think about, DMX, Public Enemy.
The Public Enemy, Team Dog, all this stuff. You want to fight, you want to go out on the...
NWA.
I was listening Fuck the Police like recently for some reason. I was listening the lyrics again, and I know the lyrics. You can barely understand me. I know the lyrics, all the lyrics of this song, and I was like, wow, the lyrics are fucking violent, but they're also really well written. You know, it's really well written, and it's an era. It captures an era. So today, that was interesting. Like a few days ago, a young guy who is really active graffiti writer, but he's a young generation. He sent me a video of him doing basically what we were doing in the past. So basically in the past, in the mid-80s, 90s, we were going out like 20 guys, 30 guys in the streets, and we were tagging in front of everybody in the subway cars, in front of everybody, yelling, taking beers. And it was what we were doing basically every night. It was the thing. It was just the way we were living. During the afternoon or the day, we were shoplifting to get some stuff. At least for me, it was that. And at night, we were drinking, smoking, and tagging everywhere. And in the weekend, we were painting the yards. And during all the day, we were tagging in the inside or everywhere you go. It was the way. And so for the story, this young guy sent me a video of them doing this kind of stuff. But I had to tell him, like, man, it's cool, but it's not your life. You're just copying, like, something you have seen on a video, but it seems fake. Even if it's real, the guy did that, it's cool. But it's a kind of, you can't do the exact same stuff, and pretending it's cool. It's difficult to explain because we did the same. We did the same that the previous generation. We tried to copy what they were doing. But if it's not your lifestyle and you do it just for a video, it sounds just wrong a little bit.
You know, one of the things that made it possible, I think, in those days is that there were not a lot of video cameras around.
Totally. It's not
People
the
didn't
same.
have phones recording people taking photos. The police didn't have every station under surveillance. So even the freedom of movement, the freedom of doing things was more possible. Now, you do that, sure, you can get away with it, but you're on so
night.
many cameras. You do it a couple of nights in a row, and that's it. You're automatically going to get arrested. So I think that the world has changed. These cities has changed. Paris, New York, Miami, all these cities have changed as a result of all this tech. I mean, do you think that writers have also changed? Are you paying attention to see?
Of course they change, they adapt. And this is why what is really beautiful in this culture, it's like it's never ending. You know, they always adapt. So you can put every sensors, cameras in the yard, the guys will find a way to go inside. And this is why when I talk about, for example, this guy who sent this video, who is this young guy does way more that I was doing or my friends were doing. In like 1 year, they almost painted more subways that I painted in my whole career. Maybe not at this level, but something like that. In like 5 years, they do way better than we were doing. So they are really strong. They are like super strong. So you do your own stuff, and it's beautiful. So I have a lot of respect for what people do today, and they have to understand that they do way more than what we did in the past. You know.
Well, I think, you know, I've thought about that often, and what is the difference between the writers now and then? I mean, there's so many differences. One, I think, is that they have the past to look at and say, we need to do more than them, right? You continue to level up and make it better and better and change it and want to contribute something more than the past so that you are part of history if you're writing now. You know, the other thing is that they take it more seriously in a way. I say that because at least when I was writing with my friends in the 80s, in the 90s, it was a lot about fun and mischief and getting over, but we never took it too serious. It was. I mean, we took it serious, but a lot of it was fun. A lot of it was intoxicated. Now I find that there's a generation of writers around the world who've learned all the tricks and all these things, and it's almost that they are militant. They're like, I think they're counting the numbers. They want to. It's like the Olympics. You know, the graffiti was fun and crazy in the past, and now for some people, graffiti is...
It's a job.
It's a job.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are two things. The first thing is when you said they know what you did, so they want to do more. There is also the fact that you always, I think that the previous generation made more than the reality. You know, sometimes you're like, because you don't really know, so you expect that these guys made thousands or 2,000 or 5,000. You had Blade, he said 5,000. So you say, okay, let's say it's 5,000, but maybe it was not 5,000. You know, or the same for Ket. Oh, Ket, he did probably tons of wall cars or what. So they try, you know, but since the beginning, I think they are wrong. I did the same. I thought the guys were painting every day, but no, they were painting in the Saturday night, one time by month.
Sure.
You know, sometimes it's like that. So first of all, I think you always expect that the guy painted, more than the reality. The second part is they can't be that free and it can't be that free and fun that it was in the past, because now we talked about that. There are sensors, there are so many cameras, there are like so many cops and stuff like that. So you have to adapt. You can't be like, at least for my generation, tagging in front of everybody every day, all the time, every single day for years like that, and nothing happened because it's like that. It's just like that. Now you do that today, they put you in jail pretty quickly. And the guys want to have a career. They want to have a career. For me, I never thought about the future. I was like just tagging, and it was just. My future was to be the king of my line, being everywhere. And when I was waiting for my train, I wanted my name inside, I wanted my name outside. And when the door were open, I wanted my name inside. That's it.
Big goals.
A big goal, big picture, you know, it was that. So if I had that every day, that was fine. That was enough. Now, which is normal, the guys, they have seen the guy being like... achieve some big goals like the maximum of all cars, eating each system in every city in the world, all these kind of challenges that you have to reach a certain level. So the competition is way higher, and now you have your fucking fun, and you're looking and you say, oh wow, the guy did that, I have to do that, I have to do the same. So in a certain way, it's less fun, it's less instinctive, it's less innocent, but it is what it is.
It's like, adult graffiti.
Yeah.
It's like adult graffiti to me. It's another thing that it's serious. Yeah. It's very well planned. Mm-hmm. It's risky or riskier, and the consequences, the stakes are very, very high, which leads me to something that we had spoken about off air, a case of a French writer, mm-hmm. A Parisian writer, Theo. Mm-hmm. This is, you maybe know more about this than I do a little bit, but there's a writer, a guy named Theo. I don't even know his last name at the moment. One of his tags is penis. He probably has many other names. But he is in prison right now for painting on trains.
It's been a year now. This in prison is Azerbaijan.
Yes.
And he's basically a political prisoner because he's in prison to have painted the subway. And they kept him because he was French, and they had some political beef with France. So he's there, and he's this kind of guy who wanted to paint each kind of model of subway everywhere in the world. So every kind of subway everywhere in the world, which is kind of crazy. It's super interesting. In my podcast, I have a focus on that, on who hit the first subway, what are the most difficult subways to eat, all this kind of stuff. And there is a real community of riders who are doing that, like chasing the subways in Cairo, chasing the subway in Azerbaijan, everywhere in the world. And it's another level. It's like professional graffiti riders, like professional vandal. And when they have to pay the price, it's pretty high.
Yeah, these are professional art criminals in a way, and we've seen this. I've also studied this a little bit, mm-hmm. and see this as a fascinating subsect of the graffiti movement. These really hardcore writers that are traveling the world, breaking into yards, taking extreme risks in places that you do not want to get arrested in because the consequences are serious. In the museum currently, we showcase Utah as one of those writers, Conquer mm-hmm. as another one. And, they suffer consequences. These writers, like Theo that we're mentioning, get arrested in these cities and they go to prison, or in these countries and they do go to prison. So it's not always sweet.
It's not sweet, and so often I compare graffiti with a tree with a lot of branches, and these guys are the roots of graffiti, It's really interesting because you can have a guy like that who is focused on having a picture on each metro in the world, and you have another guy who is making a mural in Wynwood. And these two guys make graffiti. They paint graffiti, So at some moment, I think it's important, and you do this job, is to explain the culture of graffiti. Oh, it's wide, it's wide, and it's complex and subtle. And these two guys that I just mentioned, I have respect for these two kind of people, but they do a total different job, So sometimes it's really important to say, okay, there is graffiti like that and there is graffiti like that. But I think our vocabulary will be better to be more complex, to define what is graffiti. And I think it's the role of people like you or me in France, because obviously I can't really express what I want to do, to tell you exactly in English. But my point is, this culture is super wide and complex, and you can't just understand what it is just because you opened one book or what. You have to really dig deep into that to understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of branches to that tree, mm-hmm. And I like that you refer to maybe these train riders as the roots,
Totally
right? Because
the
they're doing the roots of the work. They're doing the most illegal stuff, perhaps.
Without them, you have nothing at the top of the tree. Nothing. So that's extremely important. These guys take risk every day. They take risk with their lives. They have fun. It's a fun. Nobody forced them to do that. But they were building what is around, So yes, they are definitely the roots of this tree.
I mean, it's not different than what you were doing when you were painting trains with your friends in the 90s and taking risks. Perhaps you didn't have the same goals to go into every train yard in the whole world, but you're also going into the train yards in your own city and wanting to be a part of that and leave your mark. What is it that, when you look back at your youth and you look back at all these years of writing your name and all these different words that you have written, what is it that you derive from it? Like what's the feeling? What is it that keeps you going? Because you're still painting sometimes.
Yeah, I'm still painting. I think it's just the passion to create, my deep passion for this culture. It's really, I'm 50 now. I'm like sometimes and often thinking about what are you doing? Like how can you have a silver marker sometimes, and you do a little tag in the streets like a kid. But it's just a need, and it's just fun. It's fun. But at the same time, I know also that this little tag that I will do with a silver marker, it's part of this wide stuff of creation, and of freedom. For me, the key word of this is freedom. This is why I was acting like I was acting in the mid-90s and doing this in your own style. Because for me, when you put too much rules in a culture, you lose this freedom. And for me, graffiti is freedom. And for me, I have the same respect for a guy who just, for the first time, he takes marker and he writes his name in the streets, and he has this feeling of the first tag that you do, that a guy who did that a million times. Because it's just the doing it. It's just the way of doing it. And I think if you're 70 years old and you're painting a subway, or you're 15 years old and you're painting a subway, it's the same feeling when you're doing it, And this is probably why people never really stop doing that. You see these old-timers, they continue, they are old, and they do it. It's not for kids. It's for life.
It's for life. I think it's liberating. Mm-hmm. It's really a liberating feeling that you're describing, and I've felt that as well. Mm-hmm. I think, when you go to other cities, there's other cities that are more welcoming to artistic freedom. And visiting Paris recently, I realized that energy, that freedom was there. Walking around the streets, seeing all types of different graffiti, from tags to throw-ups to stickers to stencils to all kinds of things, getting on the train, seeing it on the train, seeing people tagging in the day, seeing so much activity on the streets. It really made me look at Paris in a very special way as a city that has a lot of artistic freedom. I mean, did you find it the same way?
It's interesting because in the past, like I said, I've been 9 years in the US, and before that I was in Barcelona for 4 years or 3 years. In Barcelona, I felt like I was feeling in the past in Paris when I was young and I was not giving a fuck about anything, so I was doing what I wanted. But in a certain way, Paris during the 90s and 2000, it was way less activity, way less riders. The culture was totally different. It changed tremendously. I don't know the word. It changed a lot. And it was more dangerous when they were arresting you. I've been in jail for not a long time, but I've been in prison for graffiti. I've been in jail every so many times I can't count. And now, when they arrest you in Paris, you have a ticket most of the time. You have a ticket, so it's less risky in a certain way, and it's super good. But it means that a lot of people can do it, and there are more people, and it creates this snowball of okay, we don't care anymore. We can do whatever because the consequences are a little bit less important.
Sure. Well, I think that then tends to happen in cities over time. They change. It's like it's a strict city, and then there's no graffiti, and then it becomes less strict, and there's more graffiti, and so cities just go through these waves. New York is like that right now.
Yeah.
I hear right now London, the trains are bombed again, and everybody's excited about what's happening in London.
And what is really cool, it's like the real guys of each city, they continue to paint, They continue to paint when it's super hard, when they go in jail, they continue to paint. And at some point, it's a wave where everybody comes from all over the world to paint because it's more cool. But the real guys, the locals, they were there before and they are still there. So that's interesting to have this perspective also of being a local and seeing the scene moving, And sometimes it can be frustrating because you have been there in the hard time when it was really bad, and now you're seeing all these tourists coming and it's the party. It's just the way it is, but I can understand sometimes some locals being like a little bit frustrated by this situation.
What I love about the locals in whatever city that continue to paint is that they sort of enter the history books of the city.
Of course.
Right? They're part of the fabric of the city. You go to New York City, and no matter who you are, if you're paying attention, for the past maybe 35 years, you've seen the name J.A.
Of course.
Just
Legend.
Everywhere. Legend. You were 10 years old, you were 20 years old, you were 30 years old, you're 40 years old. J.A. has been
It's part
present.
of your life.
It's part of your life.
This is something really heavy when people who are outside of this culture maybe think it's something puerile or something like childish or what. But it's part of our life, and like you said, a guy like GA is part of so many people's life. It's when you think about that this way, it's crazy because only rock stars, only superstars going on TV have the same status, And for these guys, they just did it by themselves, and they're taking risk every day, and they are in our brain, in our culture, in our. It's strong. It's
hardcore dedication.
Yeah. Totally.
And so one of the things that I really enjoyed about your new book was how you named some of the characters after some of these writers from around the world who, I guess, put in a lot of work or who you remember. So, the Stay High 149, as an example, rest in peace to Stay High, or, X-Ray, or, whoever you're shouting out. I thought that was a kind of a nice way to honor and to remember some of these people, Ty and Revs.
It's a tribute also for all these people who made the graffiti, and without these guys, nobody will be here. So that's Ghost for sure. Ghost was a big inspiration for me.
Ghost, Kez,
style. It was
it's interesting. I think some of the guys that you selected and some of the names in here, I believe, had that freedom in their writing. Ghost being one, Kez, these people were special and unique in that sense that they were okay to break the rules. I know Ghost as a friend and one of my partners, he was always breaking the rules, didn't care about anything, and he drove me crazy like that because I was young and I wanted to be by the rules.
Yeah, and when you're young, you want to do the same that the older people do because you have respect. You don't want, and you have to have a certain kind of personality to break this kind of rules because it's basically telling, maybe I can do better. Maybe so. It's a little bit like being arrogant in the same way, but you have also to be super confident about what you're doing or you're taking risk. It's more about taking risk, and at the end of the day, all these people, it's people who created new styles, and creating new styles is, for me, the most important part in creation, and this is why they are remembered. They are maybe not in the museum, or they are not, but Ghost was at the Museum of Graffiti. But what I want to say, it's maybe not the more known guys. You have to dig a little bit to know about them, but they are super important for the culture. And I think creating styles, it's a good way to be remembered.
Yeah, and they become sort of a bit of the unsung heroes. But the people that pay attention to the movement, they know. We remember. And I think the work that we're doing, that you're doing with the books and with your podcast, really is a great tribute to the whole movement? Because you might be celebrating your style, but there's another layer of it that I think is very special.
Of course, but you do the same. Like for me, graffiti put me in so many bad situations in my life, and sometimes I wish I was not part of that young and whatever. But in the same time, it brought me so much joy, and today I am what I am because I've been part of this movement, and I'm still part of this movement. So I want to give back, and I want to put like the important person of this culture, put them in the light, or at least explaining who they are, showing their work. And it's really something really important for me because you said, maybe people who are out of these cultures, they don't know these guys, they know the Shepard Fairys, they know the Space Invaders, they know this kind of names. But for me, I'm not talking to these guys. I'm talking to the guys who are interested into graffiti. And if you're interested into graffiti, you have no excuse to not know these people. You have to open the books. You have to listen to the podcast. You have to go to the Museum of Graffiti, talk to Kate or what. Everything is here. In the past, I was at to know in, for example, the flop in everywhere. But I had to go. You know how I discovered that? At the library, at my school library, I found one photo. The photo was to show what was New York in the 80s or whatever, in geography book. And I found a photo with the in throw up. The photo, it was the only photo, it was a subway covered of graffiti and with the in throw up. And I spent so much time to look at this photo. I cut it at the library, I keep it for me at home. And I was looking at this photo so much that I was, what is this throw up in? And I put it together to understand that he was an important person painting a lot of throw-ups. And this is how I made my own culture of this thing. Now you can know way more, way faster just in your phone. But you have to dig a little bit deeper. You have to understand and respect this culture with spending time and energy. Nothing is just coming from the sky, and you have to dig a little bit. And if you have the passion, you can know everything about the culture, and you will know a lot of interesting things and people and styles. So yeah, that's important to have this passion, I think.
One last question before we wrap up. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned a second ago about, challenges and how things can be difficult. Can you share one story with us about a time that was very challenging for you as a writer, that you maybe had to, dig deep into your spirit and show this sort of strength or a fighter spirit to get out of it?
I think one point was a turning point of my life is when I quit Paris, I quit my friends, I quit my crew, everybody, to start a new life, kind of. You can't really start a new life because there is always your demons or everything, your lifestyle doesn't always follow you. It's not just because you quit a city that you quit everything. But basically, at some point, I was feeling that I was not the person. I was becoming a person that I was not liking, And I was so deep into dark stuff that I said my only way to change is to cut with everybody. So I jumped in the train. The train was going to Spain. I stopped at the last station before Spain. It was Perpignan. This is the south of France. And I started a kind of a new life. I took an apartment, and the apartment was just next to a kickboxing gym, and I started to do kickboxing every day, all the time, and I've been really deep into that, like the same way that graffiti, but I was continuing to do graffiti, but it was a way for me to change my life, and a kind of also a way to pay something, like maybe the bad stuff that I did to people, I was okay. If I take punches, I give punches, it will be a certain therapy, a kind of therapy to maybe change my life. And since then, I never gave up graffiti. I continue, and I've continued to see my friends actually, but another way. I built myself differently to maybe having a better mindset or something like that, who made me better person. Let's say that. But it was not easy. It took time.
It's a journey
to
maturity and growth.
Finished.
Well, Fuzi, I want to thank you very much for sharing your journey and some of your thoughts on all these different topics. For all of you that are listening, we have spent some time here with Fuzi from Paris, talking a little bit about his past and his future. We are also celebrating the release of Fuzi World, his newest book. My name is Alan Kett. This is the Museum of Graffiti's Oral History Podcast. Thank you to our sponsor, Modelo, for the beers and their continued support. And check us out at our next podcast soon. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we have one.